Okay, hey guys, welcome to the podcast. Today we have a guest that I've been really excited about. This is Kat. Oh, how do I pronounce your last name?
Gaukhman.
Okay, that's what I thought. And she is a raw carnivore, and I'm not gonna tell her story. But I'll let her get started. Basically, going through how you came across carnivore, animal based, and how it developed into what you're doing now.
So, let's see. um, I was pretty healthy as a child, but I always had digestive issues. So I was always kind of, taking omeprazole. My mom, took me to the gastroenterologist. We did the endoscopy thing. We did all of that, and it just never really went anywhere. I cut out gluten in middle school. That helped a bit, but really like the root cause I've determined is a lack of animal fat. I think that's really like the thing that all humans are suffering from. And even if it's cooked or raw, it can help so much to just add animal fat. So anyway, when I got into college, age like I don't know, 18, 19 is when I started caring about my physique and I started going to the gym. And that was the worst thing I did. Even though I was vegetarian before, the worst thing I did was eat a high protein, low fat diet. So I did that throughout college and I just developed really horrible hormonal issues and digestive issues to the point where I couldn't eat anything. Like I would keep a food log and I would just eat one bite of food and immediately feel nauseous and had no appetite. So after a couple years, I stumbled on Paul Saladino, and that was 2023 or so. And I started eating raw liver, like pretty much immediately. I just started freezing it, little piece, and then swallowing it every day. And it was insane how much it helped. Like in just one day, all those meals, the rest of the day, I didn't get nauseous after. So I was like, all right, so this is a nutrients thing, like I was missing something. So I jumped into that and I did animal based for a while, but I was still really scared of fat because I wanted to remain thin and I was brainwashed. And I did feel a lot better. My skin improved and my energy was good, but I still needed coffee. I still needed, a lot of carbs in order to recover from my workouts. But toward the end of 2023, I discovered Augenis von der Planets, who kind of brought the raw food diet. And I read his book, We Want to Live. And at that point, I had completely lost my menstrual cycle, even on animal based. So even though I was eating no seed oils, no processed food, more animal fat, all whole foods, I lost my period for 6 months. So I stumbled on that book and I just knew it just made so much logical sense and also intuitive sense. And I knew it's exactly what I had to do. So I jumped right in. I got my first ribeye. Before I even finished reading the book, I got my first raw ribeye and I cut into slices and I ate it. And I will never forget that feeling of just like satiation without that overly full feeling. Like I could, go to work afterwards right away without feeling sluggish, without feeling, tired or bloated or anything like that. And I'll just never forget that. So I was hooked. And that was, beginning of 2024. So I've just been experimenting a lot, definitely increasing the fat even more. And, lots of organs. That's been a real game changer for me. Blood, dairy. And I did more fruit last year, more raw fruits and vegetable juice. And now I'm going more towards carnivore with just a little bit of dairy. And it's been working really well for me. I feel amazing. My period returned, a month into the diet, I think, and so many other issues that I never thought were related to cooking my food just disappeared. So I never did cooked carnivore, so I can't really compare. But of course, I have eaten some cooked foods over the last couple months, and raw I always go back to raw because it's just the supreme. It feels so good.
Yeah, I've noticed with me personally, like eating, so I could eat like a giant 2 pound like steak cooked, no problems, like no heaviness, nothing. But as soon as I like introduce dairy to the mix, that brings back like the kind of like overstuffed nauseous feeling. But then it
Mm.
also kind of brings back that like addiction cycle. Um, so I'm working on like cutting out dairy and I can't do fully raw. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just that like hunger Q kind of
Yeah.
deal, but I can't eat enough and then I'm like starving, but then I don't want to sit down and like eat raw steak. So then I'm like, ugh. But I'm not like I'm eating too much to be like fasting, but not enough to be like running off of food. So
Yeah.
it's screwed up my metabolism. But I do try and eat like raw egg yolks a lot. And like I cook my steaks pretty rare most of the time. Sometimes I forget about that they're cooking and I overcook them, but yes.
Well, I think the addiction thing is absolutely real. Like we are so used to that feeling, on Thanksgiving when we eat until we can't move anymore. And
Mhm,
I noticed that when I was playing around with carbs a few months ago, that carbs would give me that full feeling
mhm.
that I was used to. A little bit of rice or potato, which I very rarely did, or a little bit of fruit would really give me that full feeling. But is that good? Or is that just a food addiction? Is that just another feeling that we're chasing that, brings some sort of hormonal response that we've become addicted to? So I've had to kind of be real with myself, and I play around with, one big meal a day once in a while or a few smaller meals. And I think it depends on where you are in your cycle. I think it depends on where you are in your latitude, what's available to you. There's so many factors into it that you really only understand once you really experiment, like for a while. And it will never stop. The experiment is just going to continue. I don't know what the answers are, but I know with dairy that dairy is addicting. I mean, it's meant to fatten a cow or a sheep or a goat or whatever. So it's definitely harder to lose weight, but there's other aspects to it. It was never really about the weight for me. It was about health and just feeling good, having all the right nutrients, the right balance of minerals too. So dairy is like a treat, and I have a really good source here, so that I'm kind of taking advantage. But it depends on what your goals are, I would say.
So I think I have some raw liver in my fridge, but every time I've tried it, I just I can't do it. It tastes almost like it tastes too gamey for me. Like,
Mm.
um, if you've ever had like a spoiled egg, that's what it tastes like. Um,
Huh.
it
Is
tastes
it
like
from
what
a
a
cow?
rotten. Yeah, they're grass-fed cow livers.
Was it
But
frozen before?
yes, and I have a problem with frozen meat. I can't tolerate like all frozen meat tastes gamey to me. And everybody thinks I'm crazy, and I can smell the difference. Um,
No, you're not crazy. I completely agree. I can't. I don't. I try not to eat frozen organs because, like the liver. That's why I had to literally force myself to swallow it whole because there's such a difference. I mean, I've had a lot of fresh liver, like freshly slaughtered or within a few days eaten, and it is supposed to be delicious because it's good for you, right?
mhm.
Unless, of course, you have like vitamin A overload already from some synthetic vitamin A, then maybe your senses could be telling you to stop. You don't need any more, but it should be delicious and sweet. It should be sweet. Like it should taste like chocolate.
Yeah, it did taste sweet, but it was like that kind of gross sweet. You're like, this shouldn't be sweet.
That's interesting. Yeah. I
Um,
mean, listen to your senses, like
mhm.
if your body doesn't want it, then don't eat it.
Well, yeah, I noticed that with muscle meat too. I just can't do frozen meat at all.
Mm.
It maybe it's just all in my head, but I swear it smells different, it tastes different, it has a different texture. It's like so weird, and my body just doesn't like it. Um,
Yeah.
and I know, like at least in my brain, like freezing it really doesn't change it that much. But I know a lot of it is just in my brain because I smell it, and then it's like, oh no.
Well, it
Um,
definitely does change it because, it changes the enzyme
mhm,
activity, which is all temperature dependent. It kills off a lot of the bacteria, probably changes the structured water. I definitely would bring all of my food to like room temperature or even warm it up on a plate because I think the body wants warm food
mhm.
depending on where you live. So that's a habit I have, always taking all my food out in the morning and just letting it come to room temperature before I eat it, or even warming it up like in a glass jar, in a double boiler or something like that. Because there's a lot of those little nuances that you miss, about cooked food, the warmth and the maybe the salt or whatever. Um, but that can all kind of be replicated in a natural way. That's not going to be. And I do eat salt, just not with my food. You know what I mean?
So I guess you'd be more knowledgeable than this about me, but what is like the biggest like thing, bad thing that cooked food has that raw wouldn't? There we go.
I think I'm big on enzymes, and I don't know if there's just one thing to pick, but it's kind of all around. I think the idea is that your body has to expend its own resources to digest it, because raw food comes with nature provides, all the things it needs to digest itself, basically. And you still do secrete a lot of digestive enzymes. Of course, there's an insulin response, but um, your body's always leaching from its own mineral supply, its own nutrient supply to digest cooked food. And so basically you just age faster because, you have a limited supply of enzymes and nutrients. And the structured water is really big. So the fat matrix, that comes in raw fat and raw meat it digests itself, and things basically stay in their form. But when you cook it, they get destroyed, and your body has to like restructure it to build the myelin sheath on your cell and your nerve cells, and build the fat around your cells, structure yourself again. And so it needs even more, and that's why a lot of people run into nutrient deficiencies on cooked carnivore or any diet really, because you run out. And we already live in such a toxic world where we need those nutrients for other things. And if you just take away the cooking, then your body can deal with, the toxins without having to like another layer of things to go through. So that's really what I feel. It's like a lot of people think it's like smooth sailing. You go on raw and it's like, boom, you feel good for, forever. But your body's really going to spend a few years catching up and dealing with things that are stuck in your body. And like when I first started, literally 1 week into the diet, I got a horrible flu. And not horrible, I mean strong flu, we'll say. But I like had this total framework change, like mindset shift, and I trusted my body entirely to go through it. So when I was going through the flu, I never felt sorry for myself. I was actually really, really happy because it had been a few years since I had a fever or any kind of sickness like that. So I was like, okay, finally my body has all the nutrients to get some old stuff out. And you always come out of that feeling a lot better because your lymph system has, activated, stuff has been pushed out through the skin. I just slept basically for like 20 hours and felt a lot better after that. Like I feel like I started a new life. And so we should be encouraging that kind of detox and not associating it with food poisoning. It's just the body being like, hallelujah, I have nutrients and I can deal with this accordingly, especially the fats. Fats are very, very important for detoxing the cells, building the cells so that they can do their job. And yeah, cooked food basically slows down that process. So it slows down the detox process.
So, how do you feel about advanced glycation end products?
Yeah, I mean that's another one of those things. Like there's all these byproducts of cooking.
Mm-hmm.
AGEs are, I think, mostly in potatoes and cooked carbohydrates, which I don't think anyone thinks are particularly good. Again, they can serve a purpose. Like Ajna's one of the things he talks about, and it's been supported by other cultures as well, as cooked starches can bind to excess adrenaline in your body, so especially in your gut. And we do have a lot of excess adrenaline because our adrenals are constantly being stimulated by sugars and EMFs and, stressful lives that we can't handle because we don't have enough fat. And so it's one of those things like, yeah, you can eat this cooked starch and bind to the adrenaline, and there's going to be a byproduct. There's no shortcut, right, to health. There's always something that's going to come of it. So, yeah, I mean, I try to avoid them. That's like, there's also on super cooked steak, all the black stuff. Like, I've never liked it. Luckily, a lot of people, we like go do a s'more and it's black,
Mm-hmm.
and people like love that. Like, I've luckily never liked that. So that kind of stuff. I mean, look at it. How can you say that it's not gonna cause your cells to like freak out? and have to deal with it. Doesn't mean that it can't, but why put your body through that, you know?
Yeah, I definitely like a nice crust on my steak, but like blackened is too much for me.
Mm-hmm.
And like even with that, like there's a lot of pork, like barbecue stuff where they blacken it, and then they throw sugar on top of it. That's like the worst combo like ever. And like with
Yeah,
all these studies that are coming out saying that, or that have came out saying that like pork and red meat are like so bad for you. Well, you got to think, are these people just eating pork? Are they just eating cow? Or are they eating pork and cow smothered, blackened, and covered in sugar? Um,
exactly. Yeah, and you know, like to a certain extent, I'm like, well, what if cooked, super cooked, improperly taken care of meat could cause colon cancer? You know, and then we're like, where's the truth? We don't know
mhm.
that. Like, obviously, meat does not cause cancer. It's our natural diet, but we've totally morphed our foods in a way that maybe they are problematic, and then we villainize the thing itself rather than our mishandling of it, which is usually the problem, like always, because humans are silly. Um, yeah, so there's a lot of nuance to it, and that's like a lot of there's like the raw vegan community, raw vegetarians who we always get along with because we have the same argument. We 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 have the same thought process. They just don't quite know. Either it's a spiritual block, like they don't think we should be eating animals, or they just don't know that we can. Like I never would have been sitting there like looking at my steak and like, maybe I shouldn't cook this. I just wouldn't because of how
Mhm.
severe the brainwashing is of the parasites and the bacteria. And if it weren't introduced to me in a really logical way, then I probably would still be eating the way I was and still suffering and like really halting my progress as far as health goes. So
Yeah, I definitely think for a lot of people, like they do find cooked, like like people are everywhere different in their journeys. So like people who do cooked carnivore, maybe they're thriving and they don't notice the difference between cooked and raw and they can do what they want. But then there are people who are still struggling with digestive issues and who are still having like autoimmune symptoms or whatever it is that they're struggling with, and it's not all the way where it needs to be. And a lot of those people will go raw and they'll be like, "Wait, this changed everything."
mm-hmm.
Um and I think at least for, carnivore, animal based, primal, whatever you're doing, like I've met a lot of people who get very cultish about it. And like, oh, you eat one cooked steak and they're like, oh, you're gonna die.
Yeah,
And I can't. That's why I try and separate myself from these people, these communities that are like that, and it makes it hard to find community when you're doing this kind of stuff. But I definitely think everybody's needs at least something different. But we're all the same, our bodies are all the same. Like, like our genetics may be slightly different, but at least is what we need to eat, how our brains, how the neurons respond in our brain, it's all the same, you know?
yeah, we're the same
So
species.
at least for meat, everybody should be eating mostly meat. And some people may tolerate carbs better, but that doesn't mean it's what they thrive on or what's best for them. And then some people may tolerate cooked food better than others, and that's fine. Um, so have you met people who have done cooked carnivore to raw carnivore, like just like that?
Yeah, I would say most people on the raw diet have. They're either yeah, that's usually like the pipeline is vegan, raw vegan, and then to animal based or carnivore, and then to raw carnivore. Most people don't just jump right into raw unless they are crazy like
Yeah.
me. And yeah, they all say obviously cooked can be more enjoyable, but you know, have you ever had a cooked steak without salt? Like it's not great in my opinion, and it just needs all these extra things. Like it needs like a lot of butter basted on it. Maybe it needs some garlic and onion to really be that level of satiation and mouth feel kind of addictiveness that we're looking for. But with raw steak, I don't know. For me, it never gets old. A lot of people say they're like, I don't know how you can eat that. They look at my food, but when you make your life about something other than food, and food is just kind of like a tool to do what you want in life, that's really when you break free of the dogma, no matter who it comes from, whether it's true or not. Dogma is weighing us down, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the like you said, like the raw is just kind of the next step. There's a great Facebook page about it. They're just like carnivores who switch to raw, and it's just, I think a lot of people can digest cooked food, but we're all made of raw meat. You know, our muscles are raw meat and raw fat. I hesitate to say, but I do think we are meant to eat this diet, and people just tolerate other things.
Mm-hmm.
But raw is the final step. And some people who are really sick, like I have a friend who's 70, I think she just turned 70, and, you know, she's been her whole life eating high carbohydrates, even though it's organic and good, you know, farm produce. Switching to raw now would be maybe detrimental. She might detox too much.
Mm-hmm.
So for someone like that, I would actually say don't go fully raw. Like maybe do one raw meal a day. You'll feel amazing. You'll have great energy. But she's gone into a few detoxes, even just not even going fully in. So yeah, like that's kind of the case. It depends on your history, your food history, the state of your gut, which we all have some, to some extent, leaky gut, and then it depends on your genetics. You know, dairy wise, if your parents were eating dairy and your lineage was eating dairy, the size of your pancreas will determine how well you can digest carbs, and our body will adapt. That's the beautiful thing. We have this really strong will to live, really strong will to continue the human race. And so your body will adapt to all these new technologies we're using. It won't be as optimal as it would be if we were, you know, living really close to nature and eating the best foods, but it will adapt is the point. And so that's why people make it so long on vegan diets. And it's crazy, actually. It really bewilders me, the body's ability to adapt. So it will adapt to whatever you give it, and I would say it's a good thing for everyone to incorporate, even if you're like a vegan and you just want to switch to more raw foods. You're going to feel better because raw is law. It's the nature's law. Everything in nature is raw, and it's what our bodies are designed to eat. So
Mm-hmm. I've heard. Okay, I'm gonna ask you why you don't eat salt in a second, but I'm also gonna say something first. So I've heard, you know, just like a lot of carnivores who do carnivore, whether it's raw carnivores or just regular run of the mill carnivores, and they say if you are going to eat vegetables, you should cook them, because it lowers the oxalate. So how is that go in, like, I don't know what I want to ask. So, like, oxalates, we're lowering that, but then what are we increasing when we cook, let's say, our asparagus?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I think it's relative. Like
Mm-hmm.
vegetables and cooked meat, raw or cooked vegetables, honestly, they go hand in hand. I've talked to a few people who eventually, maybe they'll do like a month or a few months or a year of carnivore, and then they start to crave vegetables again. And I think it is because there's an element of vegetables, whether it's the fiber that's feeding certain microbes in our gut that is needed to, you know, keep them alive. Because like you have colonies of microbes that will die out if you don't feed them. And some of them are really important. So if you've had these microbes your entire life that are feeding off of vegetables, and then suddenly you know, they go into like sleep, slumber, or what do they call, hibernation. But then they start to really die out after a few months or a year. That's when you're going to start to crave vegetables again. And it might just be to give them a little bit of that fiber to, you know, revive them. And whether that's bad or good, I don't know. I think it's relative. Maybe you want to kill them off entirely, but that means you're going to be signing away your life to carnivore forever. Then you'll never be able to digest vegetables because you will have killed off the microbes that that eat them and that digest them, right? Because it's not really, it's the microbes that are turning our food into vitamins and products that we actually absorb. You know, it's all about the gut entirely. So cooked versus raw veg, I'm all for raw, but I would say juicing them is going to be the best because then you're going to get rid of a lot of those oxalates. And but again, it is relative. Like that's another thing Ajna says: if you eat cooked food, you're going to need vegetables to push it along. Otherwise it'll become stagnant in the gut. It's really hard to absorb all the cooked proteins, especially protein. But yeah, I've done both. Like I've done cooked vegetables. I do better with cooked vegetables than raw vegetables and then raw vegetable juice, which is interesting. I don't really know why. I don't know if it's just nostalgia or if it's one of those things that the proteins or the carbs in the vegetables do become more absorbable. Because that argument that what is it that the proteins unfold when you cook meat, the proteins unfold and they become more digestible by the body. Like you can prove that you can do that experiment on yourself. Just eat a cooked versus raw steak and tell me which one feels like it's digesting better. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
One of them is going to sit in your stomach for 48 hours, like feel like a rock in your stomach. And then one of them is going to digest like that. And for me, I don't need a scientific article to know what's going on. And I would do the same kind of experiment with vegetables. The more I talk to people who switch to raw, the less they desire vegetables, the less they can tolerate them as well.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something going on, some sort of mixing, but it is all relative. That would be my answer.
Yeah. So yeah, I've noticed that I don't really crave vegetables a lot, but there'll be every once in a while where I'm like, hey, I want a vegetable. And I don't like I'm not one of those people who get like super big autoimmune reactions from eating them, or else I just wouldn't eat them. But maybe once in a while I'll have like cacao powder or something like
Mm-hmm.
enjoyable for me. Not I try to keep anything like that's close to something ultra processed. Like if I mix chocolate and like peanuts, then my body's gonna be wanting Reese's cups or something like that. So I try
Yeah.
and keep something like plain and like almost kind of a little bit gross, but not so gross where I just don't want to eat it. Um, that's how I kind of do things to keep me from wanting other things that I don't want
Mm-hmm.
to put in my body. But for salt, okay, why don't you eat salt with your food? Because I've never heard that before.
I'm that's not to say I never do, but the more I read and research, the more I think that the most absorbable form of salt, again, it's about the work that you're putting your body through. And
Mm-hmm.
because I've really put my body through a lot of crap the last 2 decades, I just want to make it easy on my body to deal with the old stuff. And because I want to have children in the next few years, that's like the biggest motivator. If I didn't want to have kids, I'd be doing whatever. I'd be drinking, cacao powder every day. But with the salt, when you dissolve salt in water, it's it seems and the research shows that it's very easily absorbed into your cells. It's just like your body's like, yes, I want it. But when it's on food, again, your body has to leach from its own water supply to kind of structure it into your body, if that makes sense. That's kind of how I see it. So when it's dissolved, it's very easily absorbed, and when it's in crystal form, it's just kind of like a dried rock. And I think that's why people so Augenis Vonderplan is very against salt, and his community, which I was a part of, I would say, for like the first year of Primal, is very against salt, like very. And then most people have come over to the salt side, and they're drinking what's called plasma, which is salty water, which is the same salt constituents as our blood, which ends up being like 9 grams per liter of salt per liter of liquid. And it's interesting. So when I first started, I played around with adding salt to my food. I would get this like crazy energy response, but not necessarily in a good way, where it's not the same kind of energy that like just raw meat gives me. More adrenaline response. And so of course it could have been like that. I wasn't used to it and I just got to adapt to it, but is it something that I want to adapt to? And then I started playing around with like the salty water. Maybe I did the salty water first, and I didn't get an adrenaline response. I just got kind of this like really grounded, straight, forward thinking mind, very clear mind, very hydrated feeling. And I think I've adapted to both now where like neither of them give me a response. I just kind of am at a high all the time almost. His hair is like all over me. Um, so the time I'll have salt if I say dissolve it into my food. So if I mix it in with my butter and it's no longer crystal, then it becomes part of the structured water of that food. Or I'll like really rub it into the meat, so it basically becomes like blood. Do you know what I mean? Because blood
Mm-hmm.
is salty. Like a few weeks ago, we slaughtered a pig and drank the blood right away, and it was pretty salty. And of course, the pig was eating salt, but regardless of if it's not. And then we had a sheep also that was not eating salt a few days later, and we drank its blood, and it was also salty. So I don't know what's going on exactly, but I know that I think we need salt in this modern day. I think it's very important for cellular hydration. I think it puts you in the fast lane of detox, and it just makes me feel calm. It's weird. It's like calm and grounded is the feeling that it gives me. So let's say that I put a meal in front of me, meat and butter, and I don't want it, right? The reason I don't want it could be mental, but it's most likely physiological. And what I've come to determine is that I'm lacking hydrochloric acid in my stomach, because that's really what, will make you want a meal. And sodium chloride increases hydrochloric acid in your stomach, which is why people who drink the salt water, they claim to have a higher, um, what's the word? Desire for raw meat or cooked meat. And that's when I'll put a little bit of salt, just a tiny bit, like a few grains on my food, and I will like chow it down, like no problem. So of course it's the flavor too. That's really interesting, and um, of course the salt always, like table salt is an absolute poison. Like it's not a food, and that's the reason salt is villainized, I think. But basically, I go by the premise of like whatever the mainstream says. If you do the opposite, it's good, and that's what Augenis says too, which is why I'm shocked that he is against salt, because the mainstream says the salt is bad for you. So by that logic, we should be eating a lot of salt, especially salty water.
Yeah, I know a couple of people who do raw carnivore, and they're like, you don't need extra salt if you're just eating all raw because, meat has sodium in it, but as soon as you cook it, um, like you're cooking out the water, which has the sodium. So I've
Mm-hmm.
kind of seen it like both sides to where maybe you don't need as much salt as if you're eating cooked. But also these are the kind of people who buy like mineral water in glass jars every day.
Yeah.
So they're definitely still getting enough salt through their water or whatever.
Yeah, I went a year without salt, so like I can speak to that, and it was great. Honestly, I didn't have a craving for it. But what ended up happening was I started wanting to exercise more and sweat more, and I noticed I had a difficult time sweating,
Hmm.
which means that my body's holding on to salt, and I just had water retention in general. Um, and so I figured, well, if I'm not eating blood, which would have been a staple in the human diet, and that would have been our form of salt, I'm not eating it on a regular basis. And I wasn't doing well with the vegetable juices, which is supposed to be the replacement of it. Probably because our soils are so depleted that they just don't contain what we need, and also because they're plants. So, but then when I tried, and milk also like wasn't wasn't filling that hydration void. So I just tried the salty water and I was like, okay, perfect. And I don't drink a lot, really. Like I know a lot of people drink like 3 to 10 liters a day of salty water, and I'm just like, how do you even eat like that would just dilute all the hydrochloric acid. It would be over for me. I do maybe a liter or two a day, depending on my activity. It's really hot right now. So yeah, I just a little bit, and that's been for me like the perfect touch.
hmm I don't add salt to my water because I always screw up the ratios, but I have like salty electrolytes that are just plain
Mm.
with added magnesium and potassium. I use those a lot. And I do notice a difference when I take them versus when I don't. Like I just have more energy. I sleep better. It's so weird. And I'm not the kind of person who gets like cramps and stuff without
Mm-hmm.
having extra salt. But like as soon as I add it back in, I do notice like a small change. It's not large. But yeah, so I did Lion diet for let's say 50-ish days. And that whole time, I was only eating red meat. And that was when I first started kind of leaning more into raw. So a lot of my steak was like super rare. I tried tartare for the first time. Um, and that was an awesome experience. But for whatever reason, like I craved salt so bad that whole
Hmm.
time. I could eat like I have this little glass container of salt that I would keep in my purse. And like I'm not even joking. It wouldn't be like a little pinch. It would be like a whole tablespoon of salt on a porterhouse. Like that's
Wow.
a lot of salt. And like
Interesting.
I could go for more. Um and I to this day I don't know why I liked so much salt. And as soon as I introduced like cuz I was craving eggs and seafood really bad too doing this. So as soon as I reintroduced like dairy, eggs, seafood, like all the stuff, I stopped having intent. I forget to salt my food like 99% of the time now. Like
Hmm.
I have to intentionally think about, oh, I should probably put a little bit of salt on here, but I don't most of the time. I don't eat salted food, and maybe that's because I eat a lot of pork, so pork is very salty, anyways. But it's such a weird flip, and like, would you have any idea why one person could eat so much salt?
Yeah, I was gonna ask how much protein to fat were you eating?
Yeah, probably too, because
Probably too much.
yeah, I was only eating red meat, and I wasn't doing butter. I wasn't doing. I would use tallow to cook in, but it wasn't like I was just eating tallow. Um,
Yeah, I would say that's the absolute, like, more than cooking. It's worse than cooking
yeah,
is eating too much protein. Like,
yeah, and
because,
I felt awful. Like
yeah,
it
yeah. And
was
that's why
bad.
people blame carnivore after a while. They say, um, and it's true. I know there's like the argument. It's like, oh, veganism didn't work because you weren't eating the right ratios, all that stuff. Like, but no, carnivore straight up is a good diet. It's a great healing diet, but you can very easily eat too much protein. Like I only recently realized this. There's a great YouTube channel, Stephanie Keto Person. She talks about this a lot, and I just resonate with so many of the issues. So protein will create, byproducts, and
hmm
especially cooked protein, and your kidneys have to excrete it. So salt and water, is what you're going to crave during that because you want to just flush out the kidneys, flush out the uric acid. Um, so that it does make a lot of sense, and it makes sense also because you're craving minerals in general, which
hmm
seafood is full of, dairy is full of, and it makes sense that when you added those back in, that you no longer craved the salt. I think that's why I never craved salt on Primal last year because I love seafood and I love fish, and I ate a lot of like cottage cheese, always fermented milk, very rarely fresh. Um, and that's just so full of minerals, especially if it's raised on good grass, which I think Florida's grass is just higher in minerals because we're close to the ocean. So,
Yeah, well, I live kind of. It's not marshy. It can be marshy,
mm-hmm.
like certain times of the year, but I just live right next to like a giant lake. So the lake used to be like a dumping ground for like all kinds of toxic waste.
Oh no.
So I know a lot of people who grew up during this time who were like poor and they ate fish out of the lake, like whatever kind of fish they caught, and they all have thyroid issues. They all have
Mm.
heavy metal like toxicity, and it's like you would think just like catching a fish out of a lake, oh, it's so good, so good. No, 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 no. I could never eat that, and I'm not like a fish person. I don't like fish.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe that's because every time I ate fish, it was from this overly toxic lake. And maybe that's why I don't like it. Because if I'm down at the beach, like fresh caught fish, even if it's like freshwater fish, I can tolerate it fine. But like up here, like locally caught fish, it's not appealing to me whatsoever.
Interesting. You have a very strong intuition. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I would say yes, like yes, it's really sad. It really breaks my heart thinking about that we can't fish from our lakes
Mhm.
and that we don't feel safe just living in our world, especially once you know um, what's out there. But there's like a sliver of hope here, and that is my favorite Augenis experiment, which is the two groups of dogs. He got one swordfish, which is a good scientific experiment, and he measured the amount of mercury. I think it was mercury or maybe other heavy metals um, in the fish, and then he cut it up, and he would cook half the fish and give it to half the dogs, and then the other group give it raw. And he found that the group with the cooked fish had way less mercury in their stool than the group with the raw fish. So what that means is that the mercury, like we were talking about, that fat matrix, was in the raw fish, and it remained that way all the way through the bowel movements and just went out. It was just excreted by the dogs that ate the raw fish. But as soon as you cook it, your body absorbs it into your own fat. You know what I mean? And you're not going to have like that regular cycling through your bowels when it's cooked. So I think that's really, and maybe this goes back to the vegetable thing too. It's these little micro doses of cooked of toxins that are absorbed by our body when it's cooked that add up to these problems. So inherently it's not bad, but maybe it's just in the toxic world that we're absorbing a lot more than we're supposed to, especially because a lot of us don't have appendices. Appendices are like your first line of defense. And our tonsils are overstimulated. Everything's kind of overstimulated, so it's not going to recognize, oh, there's a poison in this food. The healthier you become, the more your body can recognize a poison pretty much immediately. And, you know, it's insulin sensitivity too. But basically just become more sensitive, which is why, for example, like the Native Americans, they succumb pretty quickly to alcoholism and drug addiction because they are much more sensitive, and they will you know have obesity and diabetes because of changes in their environment, like adding more blue light, adding electricity, or adding grains. They will react much faster and deeper because they're much healthier to begin with. But the thing is, they don't pick up on their reactions and they just keep eating it. And because it is addictive, and blue light is addictive, and electricity is addictive. So the healthier you become, the more sensitive you become to those things. So it's great that you're sensitive and that even your intuition is telling you to not eat that. So, but most people don't have that. Most people just eat it. And even if they do feel fine afterwards, but it's the accumulation of toxicity that becomes the problem when eventually you reach those stores. And then your body gives you symptoms, and then you're like, oh crap, now I have to detox all these metals from my body. You know, so that's what most of us are dealing with, I think, is like the little micro toxins from plants and all these little things that we deem as healthy. And then eventually we hit the capacity.
Yeah, so I've noticed, at least trying to add a lot of foods back in, like my reaction now is almost worse than when I had them on a regular basis. Like, I feel worse now, like adding watermelon in when I did add watermelon back in than I did like how sick I used to be. Like I thought I had food poisoning. It was like awful. It was like
Wow.
it was like a small cube. It was little. I ate it, and like within 30 minutes, I was like, thought I was gonna die. It was so bad, and I'm like, what the heck?
Yeah, that's constantly like I haven't really come up with an answer or like do I is that a good thing or not? Because it's on one hand, of course, yes, you become more sensitive and it's a sign
Mm-hmm.
of health. But then do you want to live like that? Or are you going to be in a situation where you'll want to be able to process these foods with no reaction? So it kind of depends. Like for me, I know I don't want to be a part of like the matrix society. Like I don't want to live in a big city And so it's not very important for me to be able to, I'd rather be healthy and have a more strict diet than, and live in a community elsewhere with other people who eat this way than, try to fit in.
Mhm.
That's just something you have to come up with. Like my family members are the opposite, and they don't want to be as healthy as they can be because they want to be able to eat all these foods. And then to a certain extent, like if my grandma's cooking for me, like I'm eating it, so I'll deal with the bloating or whatever for that day. But then I'll know in the back of my head, like this is not forever. This is just she's alive for however long, and I need to enjoy this while it lasts. But still, like I'm like putting some raw bone marrow on her toast so she gets those fats in. But yeah, you have to make the decision for yourself.
I do tolerate a couple of fruits pretty well. So strawberries, I tolerate like a champ, but
Mm.
they're to me, they're kind of addictive because they're not like super sweet, but they're like just sweet enough to where like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I could probably eat another one. Oh, I could probably, and I'm really lucky because I live really close to a giant locally grown strawberry farm, and they don't use pesticides at all. Well, I mean, they
Wow.
do. They only use pesticides if they need to, which is like almost never because we live like on a very farming area and all the soil is like regenerated. There's cows that live nearby. So they just go next door, grab some cow poop and dump it on everything. Like
Oh
it's
heck
not a big
yeah.
deal.
That's awesome.
But they also grow peaches and I seem to not have a problem with peaches and strawberries. I haven't really tried blue. We used to have a like a wild blackberry bush in my yard. But I think we cut it down or something. But yeah, I used to. I wish I could. I wish I still had the bush, or else I would see if I could tolerate blackberries. But
Yeah.
I haven't tried blueberries or raspberries. Or no, I have tried raspberries. And I seem to do fine with those. But it seems to be like store-bought fruit tends to be a little bit worse on me, and it even tastes different. One time, I went to the store and I had some like yogurt that I had made, but we were going out on a fishing trip, and I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to just eat this yogurt, so I went and got some like organic fruit, and it tasted and smelled like alcohol-y.
Hmm.
Like when you're like if you eat like put hand sanitizer in your hands and you eat something, that's what the fruit
Uh,
tasted like. I'm like,
some
what?
chemical or something. Yeah.
Yeah, even like inorganic fruit. I'm like, I'm never doing that. Never doing that again. Never.
And I think
It's
that's
so
such a
gross.
big aspect of it, probably for you. Like the reason you can tolerate those so well as opposed to the watermelon is because it's locally grown,
Uh-huh.
and it's berries are probably the closest to their natural form, but watermelon's like completely man-made. Like
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't, there's nothing close to it that exists in nature. It's just like a sugar ball. I love it. It's one of my favorite fruits, but it's not real. It's not natural. So we have to acknowledge that we're going to have a reaction to it. But that local component, like I have a mango tree. I'm looking right at it, and I'm gonna eat a freaking mango. When it comes to season, like it's a beautiful thing, and I've never had an issue with it because it literally grows right here, and it's imprinted with my local geography, and the light that also shines on my skin is shining on the fruit, and like we're like I'm like eating, you know, my own land. It's different, I think, and
Mm-hmm.
so I would like to get that way with animals as well, like be able to eat my own animals that I raise and have, or at least local to my area. That feels real. Like it doesn't feel right to eat lamb, even though I love lamb from New Zealand. Maybe it's like karmic. I don't know. Like, you're kind of suffering because the earth suffered with you by having to transport all of that and all these middlemen that are in between. I don't like that concept. So I think that's kind of the direction too that science is heading, is being able to quantify why exactly people that have no problem with local foods, um, you know, light, sound, like that's all going to be big in science soon, I think. And right now it sounds all woo woo. It sounds like I never thought this way up until recently, but we don't know what we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Well, as soon as I said talking about the peaches, I also started thinking, well, I work with farm animals in this area, so all of the cow manure, what the bacterias and the microbes and all that stuff that they're exposed to, my gut's already good with that stuff.
That's
But
true.
if I'm eating a fruit imported from Brazil, I'm not exposed to the same bacteria that are over there. I don't have antibodies built up. My gut isn't used to it. So maybe that's a lot of the reasons why people are having issues too, just with fruits that aren't local.
Yeah,
Um,
that could very well be it. Yeah.
and then like if we go like they say Italians live used to be like the longest living people in the world, or like people up in Rome and Italy and all this kind of stuff. And they do eat a very carb heavy diet, but they don't import from anywhere. You
Right.
know, they eat stuff that's locally grown. They do eat a lot of meat and fats, but it's not just meat and fats. They eat a lot of carbs, a lot of grains, and they do live really long, happy, healthy lives, and they smoke a lot too. So maybe it's just like the local component of already being exposed to these things, these bacterias, and maybe that just kind of helps your body not have such a big overload of trying to deal with all these things.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the community aspect
Mhm.
is ginormous. You know, there's such a like if my family's gonna grill out and grill pineapple on the grill or whatever, that's gonna digest much better for me than if I'm to eat alone, which I do most of the time, unfortunately. So prioritizing that, I think, is super important. There's so many hormones that are produced by just being happy and surrounded
Mhm.
by people you love and learning and being curious about what they're talking about. And yeah, they do, like, they eat a lot of tomatoes, which the whole carnivore community says are horrible, and the nightshades, you know, have all these toxins in them. And that might be true, but what if you can kind of counteract it with by them being local and by, you know, being cooked by like a nani who has a lot of love. You never know. We never know. And I don't think that kind of stuff will ever be studied. It'll just be up to you to determine. But we do need to bring that tradition back. We need to bring
Mhm.
something back that we can pass on to our kids. And I don't want to really, I kind of sometimes hate how much I know about these little nuances about food. Like ultimately it's better, but I don't want my kids to grow up that way, thinking of it's like thinking about food as calories, thinking of it as oxalates or these toxins. It's like, no, just eat it. Does it give you energy? Does it build your body? Does it, you know, build your bone structure? Do you feel satiated from it? Then it's probably a good food for you. Or is it addictive? Is it giving you a rush and then making you fall down? And even if it does, like, maybe there's a time that you want to utilize that for your own benefit. Like if you have to perform in an unnatural way, then you'll need glucose or something. Not, I don't think so, but some people might. And I think that's where I want to head, is more in that direction. And the science is very important for communicating with the world because that's the language they speak. But I would rather prioritize, like we're talking about, the community and the light and the local. That's
Mhm.
important.
Yeah, when I like think of myself, you know, when I do end up raising a family, it's not teaching my kids to be strict carnivores. It's teaching them about, you know, how food is made and why maybe grains could be important. You know, grains have a place. Famines. I mean, they're easy to produce. They don't need great soil. They keep you alive. They don't keep you healthy, but they keep you alive, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, fruits. Like I went through a couple of days after I ate the watermelon where I was just like dumping liquid. Like I could not keep liquid. And I ate some bananas and I think a peach or some like a fruit, but like a very high sugar fruit, that didn't have a lot of oxalates or anything that was going to mess up my system. And after I did that, like my body instantly started retaining water, which was what I wanted. You know, I was kind of not thinking so much, oh hey, I want a banana, like let me eat sugar. It was okay, what can I do to make my body hold on to water? Because I'd done tried electrolytes, all this other stuff, and I couldn't really eat anything. So like, you know, sugar, it's easier to eat because it's that dopamine response. And it worked. And even after that, like I noticed normally if I do eat fruits, I do tend to crave fruits. After that, I didn't crave anything. So
Hmm.
it was like super weird, but it was like thinking of the point of using, fruits and vegetables for like medicinal purposes rather than just like addictive, I like this food kind of deal.
Yeah, yeah, that's really interesting. It does serve, it's medicine, right? That's
Mhm.
that's where I'm coming to. Like food, meat is structure and it's the baseline, but these plants I think can be medicinal. I think that's one of those things where you use them to combat modern problems.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that. And like even with how genetically modified most fruits are now, like they're still somewhat of the same structure. Maybe they're not even close to what they used to be, but there's still like some components of them that you won't be able to like fully ever breed out.
Yeah, yeah, I know. It's crazy.
Mhm. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
I don't think so. Um, yeah, I feel like I've shared where my brain's at, but I wanted to tell you how proud I am of you because you're what, 16?
Hmm.
It's like, I mean, people tell me all the time too, like older people will say, you're so young, you're so lucky, you found this path and
Hmm.
keep going and all that. But like, you are really young. Like, that's amazing. I would do anything to have found that at your age. Because when I was 16, I was a vegetarian. I was so misguided. Um, but I'm really proud of you and glad that you're sharing this message and giving people a platform. I'm grateful that you had me on and I could share my experience with raw because it's something for everyone to explore, even if they don't. Um, you know, a lot of people are stuck in dogma and um, they think like, okay, well, I'm not ready for the whole raw meat thing. It's like, it's not a whole raw meat thing. Like, and like just add tartar to your repertoire of meals.
Hmm.
That's it. And then just sit there after you eat without your phone. Just sit there and notice how you feel. Do you feel better? Does your body crave it more? Because like my mom, for instance, um, I make her a big batch of steak tartare, like a pound or two. And once she starts eating that a little bit every day, she loves it. But she can't make it herself because she can't, just like mentally. But then she'll stop craving cooked meat entirely, which is kind of a problem because then I'm stuck making that tartare, which is like really labor intensive. Um, but yeah, I think the point is that the body adapts to whatever you give it. But
Hmm.
should you make it adapt? Why not make it adapt to things that it really knows what to do with? Fat is the key.
Yeah, and I think for at least for raw for me, like my mom does not approve. Like that, she doesn't like it. She's not okay with that. That's her only rule. Don't eat raw steak.
Oh
And
my
like,
gosh.
I'm like, are you serious? But yeah, and I think my boyfriend gets really weirded out by it too. So I think for that, like, if I were to just eat raw steak, it would be so isolating to me that it would almost be like counterintuitive to do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And at times when I've had been on going on dates or whatever, or hanging out with friends, it's tough. I'm like, it is isolating.
Hmm.
Absolutely. I agree. It just kind of depends on your level of desperation. Like I was really
Hmm.
desperate to heal. And so I was willing to eat all these meals alone. But eventually I stopped caring what other people think. Like actually kind of suing into it. And I would just bring my food to meals or to restaurants. I still cook for other people and then I just eat my own food.
Hmm.
Um, you have to let it speak for itself, right? Because people started saying, "Oh, you look so healthy," and "Wow, like you're functioning without coffee," and all these things, and "Oh, you're articulating yourself so well." And like, I can't prove that to anyone. I can just be myself, and then people have to pick up on it.
Hmm.
But you can always like that's where plants come in. Plants make steak tartare taste amazing. I
Yeah.
can send you my recipe for it. It's amazing. Like I made it for a French guy. It's a French recipe, and he was like, "Wow, it's the best." My uncle taught me it, so
Oh,
um,
that sounds good.
yeah, it's really good. The pickles and the saltiness and the crunch, and I always give it to my mom, but she'll get like a nice organic sourdough and eat it with that, and it's just great. It's
My
so great.
favorite like thing to do is like mix raw bone marrow. Like when you get it and it's like really creamy. and then
Mm.
mix it with butter and like eat it like ice cream. Like that's amazing to me.
Heck yeah. That is awesome. That's like hormone healer right there.
Yeah, that's so like my mom, like for some reason, that's the only thing that she doesn't care that is raw. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because it's not like red.
Yeah, I think so.
But like I don't have a problem eating raw meat like most of the time. I do have a problem finishing meals with raw meat. So like I'll eat a couple bites and I'll be like, "Oh, I'm done." Da da da.
Well,
Like,
it's because you feel your body's not searching for volume or
uh-huh.
calories. It just wants nutrients, which is why
Yeah.
you can drink. Have you ever had blood?
No, I tried the myoglobin, but I'm like, oh, I don't really like the texture of that.
Yeah, that's different. That's different. That's the blood. There's no blood in it.
Yeah.
But if you have blood, you'll notice you can go the entire day. Like you can have literally a fourth of a cup of blood and go the
Uh-huh.
entire day without food.
That's awesome. Yeah, I notice when I fast, I tend to crave raw meat more. And I kind of have to justify it in my mind. Like, is it because I'm craving raw meat or is it because I'm starving and I don't want to cook the meat? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, but maybe that's how our ancestors were too. They're just like
yeah.
after they found an animal finally, they would just dig right in, and you really think they would waste time like starting a fire and
That's what
all
I tell
that like
people all the time. Yeah, I say that
yeah.
like all the time. Like, because my boyfriend's like, well, he's on board with the whole like carnivore or at least like eating not McDonald's every day. But like when it comes to raw meat, he's like, "Well, we've always cooked our food." And I'm like, "Well, have we or is there just evidence that when we had time to, we cooked our food?" Like,
Mm. And the conditions too, because
yeah.
if you've ever tried to start a fire when it's wet outside, it's very difficult, and it's wet. It rains in a lot of places every day, so it's very difficult to start a fire. I think that I
Mhm.
remember I asked Bill, I forgot his name, at the Force of Nature Regenerative Conference last year. I asked him like, well, why do you think humans started cooking? Like, what's the evidence for? And he's like, well, most likely there was a big forest fire, and they encountered an animal that had been cooked in the forest fire, and then they ate it, and they're like, oh, and then it sparked their dopamine, and it was like, wow, this is like a crazy experience. Um, Maybe that's what happened, but again, it's about dopamine. It's not about health. It's not like that whole argument that our brains increased when we started cooking is on one hand either not true, or if it is true, it's because a brain is made of fat stores toxicity, and so we had to increase our brain size to deal with more toxicity as we started cooking our food, and toxicity from all sorts of things. Maybe we started eating more grains and vegetables
Uh-huh.
too.
Yeah, I don't know if that whole brain size thing is really relevant because horses like are so smart and they don't have large brains. Like you would think they do, but they really don't. And then like with my
Yeah.
cat, like he's really smart and he does carnivore kind of. He's
Mm-hmm.
really smart and he's got a little brain and like even my chickens, like they are so smart and they have a little brain too. So I'm like, is that really relevant? Because
Yeah.
like babies, they 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 have so much emotional intelligence. They maybe may not understand, like scientific components, but they have a lot of emotional intelligence, and their brains are not even fully developed yet. So I'm like, is that argument even relative?
Yeah. I exactly. It's like, who cares about the size?
Mm-hmm.
Does size matter? But it's like that's not proving anything in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's like
Yeah.
our pancreas size increased as well since I don't know, a million years ago. Does that mean that we're meant to eat carbs, or does that mean that we've adapted to eat carbs? Who knows how much smarter we were at that time? I mean, look, we can't be that smart. Like, look what we're doing.
Yeah.
We're literally like poisoning ourselves, and we're not even thinking about it. No, everyone's asleep. Like, but the funny thing is, there's this huge, I don't know if you've noticed, like huge crossover between people who start to go carnivore and raw. They start to wake
Mm-hmm.
up. Their brains start to work a bit better. They start to pick up on things. They start to become more loving, more adaptable, more patient with people. That's the first thing I noticed. Like just a few days in, I was like, I'm looking at things differently.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even trying to. I'm not doing any spiritual work, but my brain is changing. And so who knows, like, what kind of humans used to exist? Like, they're probably telepathic, and they probably could communicate on, for miles away. Like, we just don't know, and we should not settle for a lower level of health.
Yeah, like,
you know what I mean?
So I've always been into, like, conspiracy theories, like, all that kind of, I don't even know if they should be called conspiracies anymore, because, like, a lot of them are really real.
Yeah.
But, like, honestly, I read a lot of fantasy. That's one of my hobbies, is, like, reading books, reading fantasy novels. And, like, I'm like, well, a lot of it is from, like, Celtic mythology, or, like mythology in general. But where did we come up with this stuff? Like, like, there's had to be something, even if it's, like, way exaggerated, where at some point something similar to this existed.
Yeah.
And then, like, we go back to, like, the hieroglyphics and, like, the pyramids. Like, there's no way the Egyptians made the pyramids. It was way, way long ago. And, like, like, I'm a Christian. I believe, like, biblically things are right. But there's so many books of the Bible that have just been totally disregarded. And they are, like, crazy. Like, all of this kind of stuff is, like, the Nephilim, and, like telepathic, and, like, the angel. Like, it is crazy. So, I think we lost you, but yeah. I will wait. We got you back. Okay.
Oh, nice. Okay, great. Sorry, I got a call and then it disappeared, and then I didn't realize you couldn't hear me. But yeah, that I was saying, that's really interesting, and I'd be really curious to hear more about that if you want to talk about that another one, because that, like, I was just reading about how many stories were lost from the Bible, and people are just misguided.
Yeah.
We don't know what we don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And I get really mad at, like, churches. That's why I don't talk about, like, Christianity a lot, because you meet a lot of Christians and they're, like, all about churches, and I'm like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Because so much stuff, the whole Bible itself, I think, is taken out of context.
Yeah, I agree, and everything is. And we just can't take, a text, and we can't let anything control our lives, I think.
Exactly.
A lot of it comes back to yeah, I have to go now.
Okay,
My brother's knocking on my door. But thank you so much for having me. It was a really good conversation. Yeah, thanks again.
Yeah, this was awesome. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Talk to you soon.